Thank you very much, Damian, and thank you very much, speakers. Just a reminder that we are recording, so we're lovely to see your faces, but for whatever reason you don't want to be recorded, you are welcome to turn the video off. And thank you very much for joining our first session after a very interesting conversation we had in the panelist session. Today, we're going to be talking about collaborative learning, and we have a group of panelists today here, 3 main presentations. And so let me just start. Sorry, let me just change my view. Here, I see more of you. And shall we start with Evelyn? Evelyn, do you want to start?
Yes, let me share here. Can you all see?
We can see you, Evelyn. And
Okay.
we can see your slide. Can you try moving your slides just in case we see that they are moving? Because yes, perfect. That works. Amazing.
Okay, good. Okay, so hi, my name is Evelyn Nunes. I'm at the Virginia Commonwealth University, at least for now. As you can see, my shelves are empty. I'm gonna start in the fall at University of Essex, so I'll be crossing the pond to join most of you. And today I'm gonna present my research on peer assignments and where are the peers. So yeah, yes, a little bit of context. So some years ago, my university started to develop this core courses classified as general education courses. Students had to take like 30 credits on it. And then we had to submit some courses to be classified as general education to, comply with certain like standards and goals for those courses. And then they decided to create an assessment for those courses. So they were just trying to get like a big picture of how students were doing in terms of general education. And one of these courses is Principles of Microeconomics that we teach here, and I'm in a business school. So we have students for most of the around the university. And then they didn't want multiple choice questions because they wanted to, they were testing things like problem solving, critical thinking. So they wanted exercises with more like short answers. And these are large courses. So they always have more than 100 students, somewhere between 100 and 200. And we had to create these assignments that, were a little bit different and hard to kind of manage. So I had to create this assignment. So I decided to create an assignment where students were going to do the grading for me. Why would I have students do the grading? So one of the things, like some of these courses are also online, and students often report that less engagement, less satisfaction in these courses. So this would be one way that they would interact a little bit more, with the course and with each other. And whenever you add these written assignments, especially if you're going to give feedback, which is obviously increases the workload for the teacher, but it increases also the learning for the students. You're not just giving a random assignment that you're just going to grade on complete or incomplete, right? So that was my goal, not to do just complete, incomplete, and give some feedback, but then that would create a lot of extra work. And that was one of my fears. If I just did complete, incomplete, with some of my colleagues did, it has a lower stake, right? So there are incentives for for the students not to do much of the learning and putting in the effort that I want them to do. So I wanted to have students engage with the assignment, and then in a deeper way, because they would have to think critically about their learning, their answers, how they did, and I'll walk through how I set up the assignment. But I wanted them to be more engaged, instead of just, oh, the university required me to do this extra assignment, I'll just do complete and whatever. So I wanted to get them more involved and learning more, right? So that was one opportunity to, okay, I need to do a short answer assignment. Let's see how that works in this large classroom. So So that was the goal, create an assignment that would have to be implemented in a large classroom, but would not add me much grading work because we have like one TA for these sessions, and we have multiple sessions of principles of microeconomics, and we share the TA. So mainly the TA doesn't do much grading. They do like they hold office hours. And they actually helped me with the honor students, but I have a handful of honor students. And then the honor students, I always had some written assignments, but the TA grades that we don't do the much of, TA grade in the large ones. And then I decided, okay, let me see if I can do something with this. Let do an experiment, see how things work. And then I decided, let me do first students grading themselves and then peer grading. So I wanted to compare these two approaches. And obviously I needed to fulfill this general education assessment requirement. There were specific goals, and that kind of guided me towards what material to use and what try to test the students on. So what I did was a written assignment, but because students were grading themselves, it was only 5% of the grade. There were 3 different submissions throughout the semester, and they had to submit the last one also for this general education assessment. They had 4 to 5 questions. I didn't want to burden them too much because this was in addition to the other things I had. So in-class quizzes, homework, and exams. So I wanted them to actually do it and learn, but we don't need to be like, it doesn't need to be a long assignment. So 4 to 5 questions. And then I use this page 1 economics from the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis. They have like a text and already sample of questions for instructors. I didn't use all of them, all questions, but it's a very good activity. And the first semester, students would grade themselves, and I didn't post the answer key together. It was more like self-reflection on how they answered, well, the questions. Second semester, I had them see the correct answer and then grade themselves. And then the third semester, I did a peer graded assignment. So it was basically the same thing, small changes in the questions because the goal changed, but they had to grade each other. They would see the answer key after the deadline and then grade each other. So I kind of did like this 3 different interventions, grading schemes, right? And then compare them. So just so you know a little bit more about the assignments. The first one was entitled Money and Missed Opportunities. So it relates with scarcity, opportunity cost, those concepts from the beginning of the semester. Then there was one on automation and the minimum wage. So price floors, surplus. And then the third one, economics offline. So it's about competition, right? So market power, barriers to entry, oligopolies, all the things that we reviewed towards the end of the semester. So they were all independent, and students had to do the same type of grading in all of them, right? I just changed the grading by semester. So I had the 3 semesters, and you can see the number of students kind of changed from 105, all the way to 195. For my section was always online. And it, that was the main challenge, that the class was online, and it was a large section. So I used the student grading as type of assignment. So just so you know what students saw when they were grading themselves, they had basically like these options, and then they would choose what grade they would give themselves. I didn't start with 100 because I didn't want them to just like click whatever was the first one. So the first was like left blank, didn't know, and then they had the other options. And then for the peer assessment, because they were grading each other, and I wanted them to think better about the feedback, and the feedback to be more like, useful and complete, and where am I deducting points. So they had a rubric, so they could grade on a rubric. So like the first assignment had 4 questions, they were weighted the same, and I gave some guidance of like, missing something a little bit, a lot. Some questions in other assignments had like a graph, missing the graph, so I tried to guide them on how to deduct some of the points, and then they could use this for the peer grading. Okay, so some of the results. So with the self-grading assignments that I did in the fall 2022 and spring 23, the results are very similar to grading on completion, because I have like 90% have like, A's, and they're all good. A lot of hundreds there. And then some fews that were F's, basically because they didn't submit, right? So around 10% didn't submit. So very few B's. Some were actually very like honest, like, oh, this is a B. But it's mostly like you have that, completed and incomplete. That was the type of grading result. With the peer evaluations, then it changes a little bit more. So we have like the A's were like, and the 3 bars are each of these submissions in the semester, right? So the A's are around like 60%. Towards the end of the semester, you can see more people did not submit the third assignment. I'll also remember all 3 contribute like 5% to the final grade. But we have B's, we have C's and D's now, so we have a little bit more of a dispersion here with the grade. Now, another problem. Where are the peers? Because for the peer assignment, it requires students to grade each other. Like that's the final step for the assignment. They submit their part and then they grade the peer. It's like a 2-step process, and it's like separate timing, right? Because they grade the peer after the deadline. I use the language model that I use is Canvas. So they automatically assign the students that they're gonna grade after the deadline. So it's like a 2-step process. And then I always have students that don't submit the assignments, right? So in the first 2 semesters, it was anywhere between 5 and 10 and 11, right? So you can see always on the third one, more students kind of like, it doesn't matter anymore. Either way, right? For an A or for an F. But it's somewhere around that I get these Fs, like I shouldn't say Fs, like there's no submissions, right? It would be a 0. But in terms of like no submissions, like got a 0 in the assignment. In the peer grading, I have like 30-40%. And that's because if the student did not grade the peer, I gave them a 0 for the whole assignment, even if they submitted. My goal was actually to just have them notice they had, besides sending mails, of course, and notifications and all that. I gave them a 0 so they would hopefully see, oh, why do I have a 0 in my grade book? And some did notice that and then contacted me. So I allowed extra time. I waited until I could, but it's not fair for the students that submitted, right? And graded the peer. They didn't receive a grade. So then I asked my TA to grade those remaining ones. But you can see like the rate of students that did not submit is in parentheses here, around 10-20%. And anything above that, so like 20%, right? And 20% in this class was like 30 students, kind of in general, did not grade the peer and did not, respond to any feedback from my part. So yes, that's what I try to do here. I try to compare these 2 grading schemes, self-grading and peer grading. The self-graded assignments, it's really similar to grade on completion, at least the way this assignment was set up, right, with these type of incentives. The peer grading had more variance. Students, the grades probably more accurate, but I had the issue that a lot of students did not grade the peer, which kind of, reduces the effectiveness of this type of assignment. So overall, I think the peer grading it's a better option versus the self-grading, but it has its challenges, and the incentives for this type of assignments need to be, well defined to improve participation.
Thank you very much, Evelyn. We have 2 questions. Let's take one question before we move. I think I like the idea. I got it from the previous one, but let's take one question before we move to the next presentation. Then we open broader for more questions. Is that okay?
Yeah.
I'm going to get Carlos' questions because it was kind of similar to the question that I have. And do you check the correlation between self-grading and performance in the course?
I did. And I did, and it was low. So if you compare the assignment with self-grading, like the homework and the exam was much lower. I want to say 0.7. But then I was hoping to find that the peer graded assignments would have a higher correlation, right, with the final grade. And I did not find that. Even if I don't look, if I don't look at the zeros because they didn't grade the peer, you know, if I eliminate those, then it's similar to the self grading assignments. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Evelyn. I'm going to get some of the questions for you towards the end of the presentation, so you get a bit of a rest now. But thank you very much. Very interesting. I'm always fascinated about students learning as well, like grading, because I think it's a skill that they don't learn enough. But let's move now. And we have my ex-colleagues, Atisha Ghosh and Lori Barile from University of Warwick. So who's gonna, are you gonna both do it together? Or?
Yes, that's the plan. So Lori will share the screen. I'll do a bit of the introduction and then I'll hand it over to Lori.
Perfect.
Can you see the presentation?
We can. Can you just move it
Yes.
forward just to make sure that it's working? Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so Tisha, over to you.
Okay, just very, very quickly because we don't have much time. So we started this project a few years ago, especially after the onset of the pandemic, that how do students basically work together on forums in a virtual learning environment. And of course, there's a huge amount of literature on this already existing, that some students find it very collaborative, very useful, while others think that they're shy to use it or they don't find it that much useful. And they value access to lecture recordings more than discussion forums. Next slide. But recently also there has been some work on the impact of using forums on virtual learning environments and student performances, and they have found a significantly positive impact on forum engagement. And this interesting paper by Stavely O'Correll had that female and non-native speakers actually speak better after engaging in forum discussion, which they may not have been able to do if they were in classrooms. So what we do is there's a two-part thing to this project. In the first one, we look at the data from a particular module and see how students have engaged with it and how effective that has been. And we do a comparison between domestic UK students and international who are EU, representing EU and outside EU students. And in the second, more interesting part, what we do is we look at Ory's hierarchical classification, as mentioned in McCluskey topping, and we try to test how these different learning dimensions like metacognitive, social, interactive skills, and relate those to employability skills. So this is the module that we look at is a very, very large module, which is mostly for our straight econ students, and it's a second year core module. And the Moodle page is extremely well organized, perhaps one of the best in the department. And we look at data from 2020-21 and with around 400 students. And what the good thing about this particular model page is that we use Moodle as our virtual learning environment. What the lecturer has done is kind of divided up the Moodle page into lectures, revision lectures, exercise sheets, assessments, past exams, and quizzes. And he has forums individually for all of them rather than having one single forum. So that the students know exactly where to ask questions related to what. And in terms of assessments, the module has 5% worth of MCQ quizzes in the four in the first week of first term, and because this is a year-long module, and one is in the first week of term 2. And then there is a group work worth 20%, an online test in term 2, and then a final exam in the summer. And what we kind of found out from just looking at the data with the preliminary data analysis is that if we look at forum engagement in terms of how many entries are there on Moodle, we found, of course, quite naturally, most of the entries and queries were during in the run-up to the quizzes and the tests, and of course, a massive lot before the final exam. Now, if you can go to the next slide. And if you look at engagement of students by how many times they viewed the forum of a particular topic, or how many times they've posted inquiries, what are in terms of words per topic, it varies across the topic depending on what they find. There's not a consistent pattern. And
Sorry. Okay, so I'm going to discuss the regression analysis, the results, and the text analysis that has been done with the data we collected. So as Atisha was mentioning, basically we looked at two different measures of engagement. One, if you want, is a more passive way of engaging with forums, because we looked at the Moodle logs reports, and so it was just about looking at the number of views on the forums that each different student had. And then the second form of engagement was basically the total number of words that were reported in the forums. Active, I don't know what's wrong, what's going on with the recording, but
Just keep going, it's fine.
which is a more active way of engaging with the forums. And so this is the regression analysis. So the dependent variable is the performance in the module, which is measured on a scale from 0 to 1, which is the way we assess students in the UK. Then we have a set of explanatory variables capturing each single engagement activity with the Moodle resources, so lectures, revision lectures, exercise sheets, and assignments. So we didn't consider for this analysis the engagement with quizzes. Part of the reason is because the quizzes were part of the assessment, and so we thought it was quite obvious that the students engaged with the quizzes and the forums with quizzes, but also because we didn't have enough data to be considered for the analysis as for the other resources that we have considered. And then we controlled for the set of variables, for a set of controls on the student characteristics and socio-demographics of the students, including widening participation flags, disability, nationality, and the type of school they were coming from. So many different information about the students. So looking at the results, and very quickly, I'll try to summarize them because I'm conscious of time. So here you have the regression considering the two different types of engagement with the forums. So on the left-hand side, which is column 1 and 6, we decided to report the tables as we have reported them in the models as we reported them in the paper, in the draft of the paper. So model 1 and 6 refer to the more passive type of engagement, and model 1 and 6 for Word refers to the more active way of engaging with forums. So it's the number of consider the number of words that were posted in the forum. So very quickly, we see that when we look at, and the dependent variable is students' performance. So when we look at the socio-demographic characteristics, Probably, not surprisingly, students from underrepresented background are performing less well as compared to no students coming from non-underrepresented background. I'm saying not surprisingly because these are students that are joining the department with lower entry requirements, so it might take some time for them to catch up with the more quantitative aspects of the degree. International students are also performing less well in the module compared to UK home students. And then we also see that in all models, what the strongest predictor is basically the entry tariff. So is the kind of the entry requirements that the students have a huge positive impact on the student performance, highly significant. And we also see that when we consider the total number of views or the total number of words count for the use of forum, this is also having a positive impact. When we enter the different kind of types of engagement with the forum, so when we split the total views and word count by lectures, review lectures, exercise sheets, and assignment, we see that also there's some variation in the way these different activities are affecting performance. But some of them, the lectures and revision lectures, if I, sorry, I can't see because on my screen I can see, I can also see different participants, but yes, if I remember it correctly, it's the revision lectures and the lectures that basically are having a positive impact on student performance. So this was the full sample of students considered in the module. Obviously, when we consider the full sample, we might, the full sample may mask some differences between home and international students. So we decided also to run similar regressions for all the models included in the analysis for home students and international students for when considering the total views and the total number of words posted in the forum. And this is kind of showing that there is some difference in the way international students and home students engage with the different resources available on Moodle. And in particular, international students seems to be more engaged with the forums, and this is kind of translated in a more positive impact on the student performance compared to home students. Going to the final part of the analysis, which is the text analysis. So what we have done here is, so we considered the Henry hierarchical classification of the different dimensions in which students can, different learning dimensions that students can engage with when it comes to online peer-assisted learning. So these are the participative, social, interactive, cognitive, and metacognitive. We have already discussed the participative dimension and also the impact on performance. So this part of the paper is focused on the other 4 dimensions. So in the Henry's hierarchical classification, basically there's a definition of the different dimensions and also some indicators associated with these dimensions. So what we initially did is a very simple exercise by looking at the different messages on the forum and selecting the different dimensions based on the messages that were posted in the forum. And so, for example, just to give you an example, the social dimension is a statement or part of a statement that is not necessarily related to the content of the module. This is generally identified with sentences such as "I'm confused," "I'm feeling," "we are struggling," or self-introduction, verbal support. And so we counted the number of times messages in the forum were related to the social dimension, and we did a similar exercise with the other 3 dimensions. And a first message that we can learn from this table is that the social and interactive dimension, well, seem to be quite seems to be important, as well as the cognitive and metacognitive dimensions, which are more related to the content of the module, and so clarification about the different things covered in lectures and classes when the students attend the classes during term time. So we wanted to go a step further, and we wanted to see what are the words that, so this was a simple descriptive exercise. So we wanted to see what are the different words that are able to predict each different dimension. So the first thing we did in this text analysis was, again, to group the the words that are more often appearing in the messages for each single dimension. But this exercise, again, it looks like more of a descriptive exercise, was not telling us what are the words that are predictive of the different dimensions, because now you might not be able to see the diagrams properly, but I can describe them. From the top left to the bottom right, you have the cognitive, interactive, metacognitive, and social dimension, and some of the words are repeated in all these dimensions. So what we did, we looked at the words that were significantly predicting these dimensions, and this exercise is returning something a bit more interesting, because basically what we see is that, so what you have in these diagrams, starting from the top left to the bottom right, you have the cognitive, interactive, and social. We've used the metacognitive dimension as the baseline category because it was the one with less messages, basically, in the set of different dimensions. And what we see is that in the diagram, you have the t-statistic on the horizontal line and the different words that were posted in each dimension that were predicting the dimension itself. So everything that is above 2 on the horizontal line is basically considered statistically significant. And so we see that, so the interesting thing here is that for the social dimension, we saw, for example, that words such as thank and then the name of the tutor, which we have deleted here just to protect for GDPR reasons.
Laurie, if you could wrap up in like
yes. 30
Sorry,
seconds.
Yeah.
So what we see is that basically the words that predict the social dimension and the interactive dimension, when we do the sentiment analysis on these words, are also those that give a more positive feeling to the students. So just to conclude, what we find with the analysis is that obviously students are selective of the VLE resources used in the virtual learning environment, that forums are particularly relevant for international students, but what emerged from the text analysis and the thought-provoking question that we have at the end is artificial intelligence truly more capable than human workers? So is the fact that the social and interactive dimensions were giving positive feeling to the students, and these are less likely to be replicable with AI, is kind of leaving us with this final question. And that's where I will conclude.
Thank you very much, Laurie. Thank you very much, Atisha. I know that I said we give a question, but we are running a little bit over, and Atisha has addressed some of the questions already in the chat. So let's move to the next presentation, and we leave it to breathe a little bit and then come back to you. Thank you. And yes, so for our last presentation, we have Paulina here and Loveleen. And again, not sure whether you're presenting together. Paulina has started sharing the screen, so good. And Paulina, can you also check that you can go backward and forwards and we can see that you're moving? Amazing. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. So we start quickly since we don't have enough time. So this is my work with Loveleen as well, who is also co-presenting with me. and Kitalin Silvertham, that Gita couldn't attend today, so Lovrin and I will present our paper. So this paper is about group work in the context of sustainable development. And so the title is Sustainable Growth Project, Optimizing Group Dynamics, Experiences and Skills Among Diverse Groups Members. So the need to embed sustainability is now widely recognized, and education for sustainable development has been recognized as a key enabler of achieving the sustainable development goals. So the key aim of everyone, all institutions and educators, is therefore to develop the key competencies which are essential for sustainability. So within our university, which is the University of Glasgow, this has been already embedded in the learning and teaching strategy, and I guess this is true for several other institutions. And we are also from the economics department, and the education for sustainable development is among the key theme in the quality assurance agency based on the subject benchmark statements for economics. So therefore, what was the motivation or the purpose of this paper is that we wanted to develop an aesthetic assessment for 2 group projects, which were introduced in an undergraduate honors optional course, Environmental Economics. And the idea behind this project was that we want to assist students to creating a positive and inclusive learning environment within the groups, and simultaneously help them develop their competencies that are key for sustainability. So several papers have been written about group work, and it is already known that group work has several benefits and simultaneously several challenges. So in terms of the multicultural interaction and skills, several benefits have been recognized about this opportunity for students to interact with students with different backgrounds, and this will improve therefore their multicultural skills. But simultaneously, several studies have shown that groups among diverse group members is very challenging, in the sense that students tend to build friendships and tend to engage only with students who have similar cultural backgrounds. So taking into consideration these previous results, we were thinking about a group assessment design which can help students actually to develop a positive group work environment. And therefore, this positive group environment can help them to have a good group work experiences. So the special feature of this assessment design includes that we allow students to have a long-term interaction, and we allow them to work in the same group for 2 sequential projects that were connected to each other, as I will show you in a while. The assessment topic was about a real-world problem where groups had to select it carefully, and we also assigned a high weight for the group assignment. So in terms of the group assessment schedule, this is the group assessment schedule of the course. So initially, the students had to create an interview podcast, and the idea was that the students had to create an interview podcast which exposed an urgent environmental problem, as I said, selected by them, to the government minister in charge. So the students basically had to prepare that they are environmental experts, that they work for the Department of Environmental of the Environment, of the Department of the Environment in the country. Follow this population of this task, the students had to write a policy brief in order to propose to the minister how to solve the environmental problem. And in the final activity, which was individual, the students had to answer a set of reflective questions, and these questions have been used for the purpose of this study. So therefore, we analyzed part of the responses of students in this final assessment. So we will discuss several benefits of this group assignment design, but the first one that I would like to notice is that by allowing students to select an environmental problem and negotiate and actually negotiate their ideas and looking on different numerous problems across different countries, allow them actually to increase their awareness about the environmental problems worldwide, and therefore it makes them to be more aware. And they actually did select very critical traits to sustainability worldwide, as you will see here from this list of topics. So in terms of the research design, so as I said, we use a reflective assessment, and within this set of reflective questions, we have some open-ended questions which were related with the student group experience. So specifically, we asked students, how did the two-group assessment help you to learn more, improve the dynamics of working in the teams, resolve issues with team members due to long-term interaction, and finally overcome challenges of working individually. We have received an ethical approval from our College of Social Science, and from 129 students enrolled in this course, 86 have been agreed to take part in this research, and their responses have been analyzed using thematic analysis. So Lovelin now will present some of our results which are still in progress.
Thank you, Paulina. So as highlighted by Paulina, we asked students some open-ended questions about their group work experience. And these reflective questions, they form the basis of the thematic analysis, with the main question being that how did the two group assessments help students? Now, for each of the questions, we classified students' comments into different categories, as was shown to you earlier by Paulina. And the questions that received the most comments was improvement in the dynamic of working in teams, which was followed by, they could learn more, and then, they could resolve issues with team members due to the long-term interaction. Now, later I'll show you some students' comments to give you a flavor of how the design helped them. And for now, you can see the number of comments for each of these presented here. So for example, around 148 students commented on how the assessment helped them to enhance their learning. Now, within these contexts, the three themes, Paulina, next slide, if you could. So within these comments, the three themes were interactive learning, knowledge exchange, new perspective and approaches, and engagement with environmental issue, interconnections, then policy implications and solutions. These were like standing out. So when we look at the how it enhanced learning, this collaboration between students basically helped them not only enhance, but also broaden their understanding and awareness of the sustainability issues and the possible solutions. So aligning with, if we look at the sustainability competencies that are required for students to develop. So the main one, when you can think of engagement with environmental issues, interconnection with policy, and the policy implications and solutions associated with that. So there was this very nice comment that we have picked up for you here, which basically talks about how students were discovering, new environmental issues. And if we move to the next slide, what we find is that, students were also developing skills for their own professional and academic work. So, for example, they gained digital skills through podcast production, and also they learned how to do policy brief, and as well as strengthening the research skills. Moving on to the next one around, how they were improving, the work that they were doing, the dynamic of the working in team. One of the theme that I have picked up here is the improved communication methods and effective collaboration, where you will see that comment here that group work helped to work on negotiation skills as significant amount of environmental issues are wicked problems, and adapt our approach to the viewpoints of all the members. And then there were further other themes which are here. Clearly, I cannot cover all of them in one single, discussion. So I'm leaving this for you to see later with the recordings. So here in this next slide, you can see some of the comments which students also came up with different areas. So there's this one on culture awareness and inclusivity. This was very interesting one for us, because students were basically, working from different countries. And this was like a learning for in terms of cultivating culture of not only helping each other, but also being aware of that, not everybody is on the same, place. So this was quite an additional thing. We also noticed students talking about mutual respect, recognizing the need for having leadership to make this, group work possible. So if we go to the next slide, yeah. So this is about, resolving issues with team members. So due to the working in the long-term interaction, we found that, very interesting and positive comments actually here, that the ongoing teamwork strengthened the relationship and improved team dynamic by creating and executing innovative strategies that students came for completing the task. Even including, any kind of a conflict they had, they were able to resolve it. So on building positive team atmosphere, you can see here, students had a comment. In fact, they knew each other better, and they were able to find a good solution for everyone. So this is all because of the long-term interaction. If they have not been together for several months, the solution to the conflict probably, it would have been very difficult to come to, or probably it was impossible. And this is something, students have highlighted in their comments. Now, building interpersonal relationships, and then accountability, constructive feedback, provisions. Again, there are several themes which were emerging. Here we see that students mentioned that by working in these projects, in fact, by the end of the semester, they became even friends. And often they would invite each other to do other activities together to improve work and overcome any kind of a fatigue. So it seems like there was not only just academic community, it was also socially and, peer-wise taking care of each other's well-being. That was also an emerging theme here. Now, again, if we move towards the communication, they also found that they were able to communicate efficiently to find solutions. And these solutions were often come by, very quickly. They didn't have to really wait longer or try to, learn these things on their own. And then if you look at the understanding team members and working dynamics, which they developed eventually over time, and the long-term nature of the, this thing of the assignments really helped with that. So there was another thing that came up, which is the overcoming challenges of working individually. So here, collaborating in a group environment helped students in addressing and overcoming personal challenges by encouraging each other to reflect on their roles, their behavior, and the actions which they are taking within or, even outside the group. So, for example, this design provided supporting conditions for delivering excellence and enhancing output quality. So it could be through peer assessing each other informally, or it could be through sharing, which this comment example that you see here provides. Then it was also useful in boosting performance and productivity. So by leveraging strengths to be more productive, they were able to, come up with better ideas. So next slide, Paulina, where you can see, students' comments around how they were able to leverage the strengths. Even not only for leveraging, but also even for, better strategic planning, which they did with their team. So for example, a student was talking about that together they were able to create effective design. So for example, they wanted to talk about fire, and they used, orange color as a background, and they felt that this was quite effective in communicating what they wanted to actually, communicate to the lecturer and also to the others who are listening to their podcast. In terms of ease of working, they could receive clarification and support from teammates. And you can read the quote in your own time. What I would like to share is, one final comment where, one student made an important statement about the weight of the group project. And they mentioned that, the higher weight allocation to group work, which was 80% in the case of this course, the teammates were more involved, and they were willing to get to know each other compared to if it was like a lower weight assessment. So, so this is the thing that, when there's like lesser weight, or, if the interaction it's not long term, students would often struggle to build similar relationship with, peers, say in a shorter coursework. So Paulina, over to you for conclusion.
You're muted, Paulina.
I didn't realize this. Thanks. So basically, this was the first experience of students across the program with a group assessment with such a high weight, and it was the first type of a student's experience with this type of innovative assessment, like producing a policy brief and a podcast. So what we haven't discussed in our discussion is that obviously this group experience has been also facilitated via other class activities. That is in the class, students used to work in groups, and we also provide them training activities in order to produce the podcast and the policy brief and how to develop group work skills. And another thing is that, which is related with one question that I have seen in the chat, is that the students, they did have the opportunity to express any issue using peer evaluation. So there was a form where the students have to report problems in both assessments. And what I can say is that as we move from the first to the second assessment, we have identified fewer issues across the groups in total. And it seems therefore that students, they really find ways to overcome problems due to this long-term interaction. So summarized, the results of this work. So we can show that this specific design of group assessment helps students to have a very good group experience in comparison with other group assignments they had in other courses. And this helped them to develop key sustainability competencies and also address some of common issues that have been highlighted in the literature. So 4 main topics, and we have identified the development of team skills, enhanced learning, long-term interaction, and overcoming of individual challenges. And working on students' responses, we have seen that these are related with specific key sustainability competencies. So therefore, each of these categories is aligned with the key sustainability competencies framework of UNESCO 2017, as you can see in this illustration. So I will end up this presentation with a positive statement, which you may also have the same perception. So this quote is coming from Revans 1988, and it says, the ultimate power of a successful group lies in the brilliance of its individual members, but in the cross-fertilization of its collective abilities. So I think that all of us who used to work with others, we also feel this. And the benefits of growth is strongly related with utilize its individual strengths, I think so. So we will stop here and we will address any question on the chat. Thanks a lot for your attendance.
Thank you very much, Paulina. Thank you very much, Lovelina. I really enjoy your presentation and your graphics. You got very good comments for the graphics in the chat. So let's have a round of questions for all of you. And Lovelina and Paulina actually addressed one of the questions already in the conclusion. So let me go back to Evelyn in first place. And I know Evelyn has been very active in the chat, addressing a lot of the questions. Paulina, do you mind stop sharing the slides? So it just gets easier to have a conversation. Thank you very much. And Evelyn, one of the questions is, did you explain to students why you were doing this? And remember, like Evelyn was doing a lot of peer feedback and self-assessment for students. And I think it's an important part of the journey when we do these things is explaining to the students why are we doing here and how they are going to benefit from this. And do you have any of these conversations and what was the outcome of these conversations, Evelyn?
Yeah, for sure. That's a great question. And I did talk about it in class, you know, especially when I was explaining the assignment and I was reminding them to grade like the peer when that was the peer. But I feel like I maybe could have written more about it in the instructions, you know, like to emphasize. I think we should always emphasize why, you know, we are assessing them in all those ways, but emphasize better that step, because I don't know, it was just one of the steps, right? And I enumerated, like, you read this article, you answer these questions, you upload, you come back to grade the peer. And I didn't tell them beforehand that I would give a 0 if they didn't complete that part, because I did not expect so many not to complete that part. And then I started to assign zeros, and some of them complained, oh, but I submitted and you assign a 0 to the whole thing. And I was like, yeah, because I consider that, you know, an important part of the assignment. So I consider you did not, you know, fulfill the whole assignment. So yeah, for sure, there can be more emphasis on that, I guess.
Thank you very much, Evelyn. I think it's important to remind ourselves more than anything to always keep communicating with students why we are doing things. And that's the part that we sometimes we forget. A question for Lori and Atisha. I think you, sorry, I tried to keep up with the chat as well, but it's very, I don't know whether you addressed this already in the chat, but there was a question about what do you do or can you do with the information that you collected on international students? Because, you know, two things. At this stage, you have collected a lot of information and you have how students engage. So I guess the question is what next? What are we going to do with this information? How this can inform students' engagement, or what you are going to do with your students in order to help them to support their engagement and performance? I don't know, Atisha or Laura. I can't see Atisha or Lori's here.
Can I take the question, Steffi?
Yes, please.
So the results from the analysis suggest that the international students are doing worse than home students in the module, but it also suggests that when they engage with the forums, there is a positive correlation with the performance in the module. So what we can do with this information is that we need to probably explain the students, international students, and also home students, that it could be beneficial for them to engage with forums, and not just because it links significantly with their performance in modules or in certain modules, we haven't done this for all the modules in the department, just for the econometrics one. But also it links also to employability skills, and they can improve on their communication skills, especially non-native students might benefit from, engaging in conversation with other students in forums, not necessarily in environment where they are assessed, they're just interacting with others. So this is what we suggest in the paper,
But
that we should explain them that
And
there are benefits.
Just to add on to Laurie, I think we're also implementing some of this when we are talking to students during Welcome Week, especially to international students, telling them how to transition from a different environment to university. What are the things that they're going to face? What are the new resources they need to use? How to use those resources? So I think we've trialed this, Laurie, for around 2 or 3 years. The learning to learn resource, and then the writing resources, and then also the speaking to the students about saying that, yeah, we acknowledge that this gap exists, and so these are things for you, for self-study resources for you to look at, to kind of help you with the transition.
thank you, Laurie. Thank you, Tisha. And I think perhaps this is part of a conversation. I think Tim is following up, perhaps been already in the chat, but perhaps gonna be good. And for you too, but if anyone else have ideas, because I have this feeling as well. I was wondering whether to observe students engaging in the forum doesn't mean that this is causality in a way, but we might see is what we don't observe is so students who engage with the forum might be students who are studying more outside as well of the module, and they are on top of everything. And so kind of just telling students engage with the forum, might not really be what we want to do. Is kind of overall what the students are doing. So better students, as I think Tim put it in the chat, good students use forums, good students get good grades in a way. It's not necessarily a causality there.
No, I don't think we are claiming causality as well. It's just a correlation analysis at the beginning, because we cannot claim there is obviously, whenever we started thinking about this, we knew there's a self-selection problem here. So there is no doubt about that. But getting around the self-selection problem is another thing to think about, which requires much more digging and much more, that data may not be available.
Can I also add on this that there might be a problem of self-selection, and I agree with that, when students use forum, and better students are also more engaged with modules and the learning material. But we have considered, exactly for this reason, we considered data during the pandemic. So students were forced in a way to communicate online with the tutors and module leader. And so I think that we can a little bit relax this endogeneity issue here, because that was the only way they had to ask questions to tutors when we moved everything online. And it's, it's part of the reason why we focused on the data analysis on 2021 as an academic year.
Yeah, I think it was more related to perhaps the recommendation. But let's move to Pauline and Loveleen for now, and we come back to this. I'm assuming there's going to be a lot of chat on this. Economists love endogeneity, right? So we know there are going to be a lot of conversations on that. But there is a question also for Loveleen and Paulina. Group work, you said, is worth 80% in your module, and that's very high. Even I'm passionate about group work, but I have pushed it to 50%. 80% is very high. And someone else, did the students think the grades they received were fair? Because good groups, they tend to think, oh yeah, that was amazing. But if there are going to be always some groups that they say I could have some members in some groups that I could have done better on my own. And how do you deal with that? And I think in general, how kind of you supported the students through the group work? What sort of support they got during the year to kind of learn to work together and manage conflict? You mentioned a little bit about this in the presentation, but if you can expand.
Yeah, so first of all, I will also address some of the other questions that are similar with that. So basically, this was a repeated game with punishments, in the sense that they have been assigned individual grades. based on the students' peer evaluation form. So the peer evaluation forms have been specific questions that have been used explicitly to infer some information about the individual contribution of students. And obviously, this evidence hasn't been considered in isolation. So after reading the students' peer evaluation feedback, we have meetings with students, and then via a follow-up discussion, we determine whether an individual grade should be assigned to an individual member. So in terms of the conflicts, so as I said previously, we haven't had many students in groups with conflicts, in the sense that these conflicts have been reduced over time. And I remember at the end, there have been only issues with only 3 out of 35 groups. So therefore, and this specifically 3 groups, within these 3 specifically groups, only one was related with consistent conflicts that haven't been resolved. So therefore, it seems that this 80% have really motivated students to find a way to work together. And they realize this from the beginning. So in the sense that while in other group assessments in our program, the students, because I'm the director of the program and I can observe the forums of each class, I have seen students, they get together 1 week before the deadline. For this assessment, the students immediately after the random allocation, they start working together and have immediately the first groups, because the first deadline was quite close. And therefore, the students have, for example, to book a room for recording the podcast. So they have, therefore, to have a very good time management and allocation of skills in order to manage to perform well. So yes, 80% have been quite high, but at the end, none of the students have been complaining about perceiving a lower grade than they could achieve individually. So except from one group, as I said previously.
Thank you very much, Paulina. Loveleen, do you want to add anything? Or are you happy with it?
Yeah, I think Paulina has more or less covered this point. I think this is like something that we have seen, that many students like to work in group, but often they face challenges in working in groups because, at times they don't know how to manage these things, or maybe there's no scaffolding around it. So I guess, we had these kind of help and support system in place for students where they were able to, get any kind of help they needed, or the training or support available for writing the policy brief and even for podcasts. That really helped them overcome those challenges. So I guess those are the things are important, but in order to make students motivated, they need to also see sometimes the fun part of it. And I guess in these group assessment, at least from their comments, you can actually gauge that they were sometimes meeting afterwards also. It's not just limited to the group discussion about getting good grades. So that definitely the higher weight and the longer interaction really helped very much.
Thank you very much, Loveleen. And I think Douglas, I put it in the chat as well. It's very important. I think sometimes we forget how important it is to scaffold the learning, and perhaps having these interim deliverables is very helpful, not just for even group work. I think for group work are particularly helpful, but more in general, I think they are even for individual works. And we sometimes just allow students, okay, 100% final group, final project, submit, and well, if you did well, otherwise, who cares? I think, yeah, no, I really like your idea. I had something similar as well, and we might need to chat, because actually we had something similar with team working on. And I have a question.
I would not add, it's not only having several pieces but that are connected, but simultaneously require different level of cognitive skills. So moving from the lower to the highest one, because the students at the end, they need to realize that a group work is challenging, and without the help of others, they cannot actually perform well. So yes, this is another element.
Yes, it's very good. I'm very impressed that you managed to convince the students that 80% of group work is a thing. And just one more question. Was this an optional module or was it a compulsory one?
It's an optional course, but simultaneously, this is a very popular course. So in the sense that, as I said, in the cohort, let's say 220 students, 135 students, they are enrolled in this course. So yeah, it's a very popular course. Yeah.
Thank you, Paulina. And going back to Evelyn, have you considered perhaps, so something that have worked with me in the past is kind of when the students give peer feedback, what I consider is not really like the peer feedback that they do. So for instance, let's say Evelyn is marking Lori's work. Evelyn's going to get a mark for how well she wrote the comments for Lori rather than what she wrote for Lori. I almost don't care about that much. And I think that helps the students because they become very conscious, very conscientious about what comments they write rather than just, making it very quick or something. I don't know whether you have considered like building up, and that's also going to help with the scaffolding and help with learning. I'm fascinated because I don't think we teach students to give feedback and what feedback is. And so that's a part of the process that they are not aware of. We are, but they are not. I'm not sure whether you have considered.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And I do think the incentives there, like to grade, right, your peer that was grading you, right, your peer grader, would be important. Just two things. The way I set up, I used on Canvas, and it was in general anonymous who was grading you. So in that system, I couldn't have them grade their peer grader. They did find out sometimes because the grader would go and write a comment and then they could see the name. But in general, that was not their link because I could, set up an extra assignment that they grade the peer, but they didn't know who it was. And it was like randomly assigned. After I was researching the literature, I found out there are also some softwares that do peer assignments like that. And then it's already in part of the software that you grade your peer who graded you. And then, everything is done within the software. So that improves their part because it's clear, right? Someone's gonna grade you. That's also a suggestion for group work, right? Grade peers in your group work so everyone is participating. So yeah, I think it's some type of incentive there, which then really matters how you're doing the peer grading. That I think that's important.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think, and Parama put it in thing. I think it's an aspect we will help with so many things, like students learning how to give peer feedback and stuff. Just keeping an eye on the chat. And so Paulina and Lovelyn, you have been asked if you're willing to share your policy brief assignment with the scaffolding elements all included. So if you're willing to share that, even like with, I'm pretty sure CETL going to be very happy to put that under your presentation today if you are happy with that. There is some more questions about the group work. Let me just go back a bit to Lori and Atisha. And on one thing I was thinking, because of course you are doing this for one individual module and I wonder whether you can consider perhaps performance in other modules. I'm trying to perhaps brainstorm at the same time I'm talking, so apologies for that. But you have all the information about these students, how they have done in previous, in past exams, in past modules, or in contemporary modules, and to kind of see whether those students who kind of engage more in this particular module that you have seen an increase in engagement perhaps in the forums tend to performance, so more a differential rather than just an automatic. That might help a little bit with the endogeneity issue, or at least control for past performance in the modules. You can control for first year performance or something like that.
We have control for first year performance in core modules, and results don't change much. We thought that the entry tariff in this context where I'd say were better indicator of their previous performance, because first year students basically don't, first year results don't necessarily count towards the final degree. And so we just decided to go with entry requirements, but we have controlled for first year performance in the core modules, because that's the only information we have. So also excluding the optional modules, we thought, it's not necessarily the best indicator of how they performed in the first year. In terms of replicating the analysis for other modules, the problem with, well, not the problem, this analysis was done using this particular module because it's the only one in the department that is really rich in terms of the use of forum for the different kind of learning activities that you can have in a module. There's no other module in the department that is using forums for topic in this particular way. And for the few modules that are doing that, we didn't observe, we didn't have much engagement, probably because they are optional modules, not core modules. And so, or maybe, the fact that it's a quantitative module compared to more qualitative modules, it's also making creating an issue. So the only reason to focus on this module is because it was quite rich in terms of the observations that we could get for forum engagement.
That's okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm still thinking, but I keep thinking, and perhaps we have a chat about this later. Okay, so just keep looking at the chat if there are more questions, but I think there's a lot of questions on group work, and I think perhaps this is a very open question. So Paulina and Lovely, don't feel like you only have to address this, but I think it's a question more in general. I think like I invite almost anyone in the conversation to have their thoughts. Should we be teaching students explicitly how to work in groups productively? If so, how and how much? And I think, like, personally, I think a lot, because I think we don't do this enough. And I think it's because, and perhaps this came out from the panel session this earlier today, we tend to play safe in a way. And, students complain a lot about working in groups, so we don't do group work, because to avoid to kind of have to deal with it. But I think Paulina Lovelina is like a lovely example on how, if you put the efforts and, perhaps all the time that you save in marking individual works instead of, marking things, you invest part of that time in setting up the group work, that can help. But people say work has always been collaborative, and we know that Clodagh had that this brilliant research in which she looked at what employers are asking, and employers are asking students to work more collaboratively. So I don't know, just open, as I say, at this point to anyone for final thoughts on this.
So I will add one more element. So I think, as you say, it is quite important. And right after this group experience, several students actually have expressed to me that how helpful was this group experience, because when they have been in a situation of an interview, they have to perform this type of group work task within 1 day of the interview. It was very helpful. So we really thought about this assessment as an experiment, basically, and this experiment has been successful in the sense that it is not only individual grades, it is also the student experience, how students enjoy their learning, and at the end, how students develop the skills that are useful for the future. So I think sometimes we overdo with thinking about student performance, and we neglect sometimes how actually students enjoy learning, and therefore lifelong learning too.
Thank you very much, Paulina. Clodagh, I saw your camera coming in. Do you want to say something?
No, I was just going to say keep the group work coming. I think once you've done it over time, it's less difficult. And I think that's, I know moving to it can be scary for people, but actually, the same comments as we had earlier about explaining to students why you're doing it. I mean, I teach in a business school and every module has group work, and it's just taken for granted that you will do group work, whatever the discipline. But, students dislike free writing, but they do like group work, and they're different things. And I think, if they can focus on the value they get from working with others as much as possible, it can really bring benefits.
We are seeing a lot of students not attending, engaging. A big issue for group work. I will say personally, Parma, I think actually group work can help with the student engagement in a way, because I do see students when okay, I've seen a lot of people noting and like people commenting in the chat opposite. Yeah, I agree. I do believe that once we set group work, actually this brings sorry, I'm trying to read and talk at the same time, but this will bring students together. But I don't know whether anyone thinks that's different.
So I would like to add that, not only for this project, but even in some other courses, I have group work as a compulsory, again, assessment, not like 80%, but 35%, which is also high. And what I tend to do is most of the classes, like they are initially like first half, 1 hour is like didactic, and the second half is all learning through group discussions. And that really helps students to practice, like, if there are 5 lectures, they would be doing this group work 5 times or 4 times or maybe 3 times. So I think, if we are giving them different, opportunities for practicing those skills and helping them, I think that can also be very helpful in supporting not only, giving them trainings about things, but also opportunities to practice those things. And I have never, like you said, the participation, in fact, in the classroom, because of those group discussions and because it's adding to the group assessment, has been like quite good.
Thank you. And I think another thing that kind of we don't talk too much, but something I noticed when I started setting group work was that, of course, sometimes the students do complain, and I give them window for complaining about other group of students. But what happens is then what I have to do, contact the students, and they say, oh, Paulina, sorry, I heard from your group that you might not have been as active in this period. What happened? And when it comes out, usually students do not just disappear because they don't want to work. It comes out they are having problems with something. So that has helped me to speed up the process of allowing students to kind of, contact whatever, the well-being services or whatever they think they need. So it also has helped me to kind of keep, because the other students help me to keep track of the students. In large groups, sometimes this is impossible to do, but through group work, and, as I say, I give them various windows that really been helpful for that. I don't know whether that's also similar experience for you, Pauline and Loveleen, but it has been really helpful for me.
We have such experience where the students disappear and there was reason for disappear, and we identified that it was a well-being issue. Yeah.
So I do think it has been so nice to chat to you all today, and I think I learned a lot, and I think it's very good. It feels good to see kind of what people are doing. And as I say, I think if we had this conversation maybe 10 years ago or 15 years ago, people would daring less, but I see now more and more people moving and changing the way that they do assessments, and they try to increase engagement. So I think there are a lot of challenges that we have to face, but I also think there is a lot of good educators here and around the world helping. Evelyn, I forgot to say, welcome to the UK. We're looking forward to have you in our communities, but thank you very much, CITEL, for hosting us, and thank you everybody. Parma, Clodagh, anything that I have to say to like what is happening later today or tomorrow?
Yeah, so we have a networking mixer just coming up in a 5 minute at 6 o'clock British summertime. So if you want to take a quick break, that's cool. There'll be a slide that goes up. We'll have a bit of a chat, and then we breakout rooms to discuss either of these issues. I can see the chat going like crazy, so I think people have still lots more to discuss. But we also have a communities of practice initiative, so you can there's a breakout room to discuss that in, well, just about 3 minutes now.
So get your 3 minutes, get your drink or something, and I'll see you very soon. Have a good day, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank you
Steffi.
very